we actually need to go back to the drawing board and find a different solution for this hard problem of personalizing things without data. In particular, we need to go back and think outside the box, in particular the applied search box. What we know about this is we have two ingredients in which we can start from. One is products, right? Because everything we know about an e-commerce is that e-commerce is actually based on product, right? The whole point of actually selling stuff online is to have products and people buying that. This is an example of a sport apparel retailer. He sells, soccer stuff, basketball stuff, tennis rackets, skiing objects, and so on. And this is how products look like in a catalog to humans. It's basically a list of items with some metadata that we are all familiar with. And then there's a second thing that we know, which is sessions. Let's say this user, like user 1 and user 2, we don't know anything about them, as by definition. As Shiro was mentioning, people tend to not come back to the same website. But what we do know is what they're doing right now into a shopping session. For example, we can observe user 1 browsing and adding to cart tennis-related items, a pair of shoes, tennis racket, a skirt, and then we can observe user 2 browsing and adding to cart, removing from cart, checking out soccer stuff, like soccer shoes and a soccer ball. And we can do that in real time. So these are the two ingredients. But the question for us is, how does AI see these two ingredients? If we can open the brain of a neural network, what will we see? Well, the first point is that when we see a catalog that is a list of items, AI actually sees a map. What do I mean by a map? Well, I quite literally mean a map. This is a three-dimensional representation of the sport apparel catalog that we saw before. We don't have a list of items here. We have dots in this three-dimensional space. As you can see here, each dot represents a product, and products are color-coded by the sport activity they're related to. If you plot the items that we saw before into this space, you will see that these items are all around the place. They'll all inhabit different regions. Why is that so? Because in this space, in this map, items that are semantically similar, that are close together, that share the same property, will be in the same region of the space. Items that are far apart will be very different. This is profoundly intuitive if you think of what happens on a geographic map. For example, the map of Earth. San Diego and Los Angeles are very close in the map, and in fact, they actually share most of the properties, right? For example, the weather is very similar. There's the sea, there's paradise for surfers, and so on. Los Angeles and Reykjavik, on the other hand, are very, very, very far apart, and in fact, they really don't share that many properties. The second thing we need to teach an AI is what to do with session then. So when we see sessions, so when we observe user 1 and user 2 browsing and clicking and adding to cart, what is AI seeing exactly? Well, AI is basically seeing path or journeys on that map, right? Let's go back to user 1 here. User 1 is browsing for tennis products, so a pair of shoes, tennis racket, and she's in a particular region of that space. Again, the metaphor is very easy to understand. You can tell a lot about a person knowing the fact that she goes on vacation, let's say, in California trip, so going and moving between San Diego and LA, instead of on the Rocky Mountain. For example, you can tell that she likes, sunny weather and surf. This is the same thing in the product map. The product map is exactly the same. So depending on when you're walking into this map, the machine can tell us a lot about your interests and preferences. Of course, when you look at the second user, so user number 2, he's also walking to this map. So he's walking from one of these dots into the other, checking out products in the sequence, but he's exploring a very different regions of this space. What is crucial to learn today is that everything that AI needs to know to do personalization for anonymous user is just where the shoppers are on the map. We call it informally the product GPS, right? It's the sort of pointers that tells you where a user into this product space and what he actually likes. We don't need any personal information. These users are not logged in, it's not Amazon, they come in for the first time. We don't need any purchase history because by definition, we've never seen these people before, and we're able to do these things before they buy anything. The only thing we can observe, again, is what these people are clicking, what they're doing live on the product interactions, what they click on, what they see, what they add to the cart. When you put all of this together, the AI is able to provide you with this. You see here a very common query for a sport apparel shop, Nike, of course, and then you see user 1 and user 2. As you can see here, these two users, same query, gets a very, very different result. Pretty much like Shiro was showing before about Amazon, right? Why? Because relevance is really in the eye of the beholder. What do we mean by that? We mean that, sure, the linguistic behavior is expressed by the query Nike is super important. Of course, as you can see here, results are very relevant, but there's an additional component to this, which is the context, which is personalized for what user wants right now in these very moments.